So you've worked hard, saved up 50k, and now you want to invest in property. You've watched Homes Under the Hammer, scrolled through Rightmove every night for the last 6 months, but you've realised you still have no idea what you're doing. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take you from knowing nothing about buy-to-let property investing to feeling confident about how to navigate it without overwhelming you. And there's good news. Buy-to-let investing is probably your most basic property strategy and your lowest risk. But there are a few key things you need to know so that you don't get caught out. Let's get into it. So to start with, what is a buy-to-let? Well, buy-to-let is one of the simplest and most common ways to invest in property. You buy a property, you rent it out to a tenant each month and earn rental income. Now that income, minus your expenses like mortgage, insurance, maintenance, etc., is your monthly profit. And the end goal would be to build up enough of these rental properties to create long-term cash flow and wealth. So let's talk about property flipping. Now you might have heard of it, and that's where you buy a rundown property, refurb it, and sell it on for a profit. Now that's great for lump sums, but it doesn't give you long-term income. And buy-to-let is different. You're holding on to the property, renting it out, and earning income every month. You might have also heard of BRR, which is buy, refurbish, and refinance. And that's where you buy a rundown property, add value to it, and refinance at the higher value. But we'll cover that in a future video because this one is about buy-to-let only. Now, what does it really cost? Because this is where most beginners get caught out. You can't just buy a property with a 10% deposit like you can for your residential home. For buy-to-let, lenders typically want a 25% deposit. Then there's stamp duty, which is usually 3 to 5% extra for second homes, depending on where you're buying in the UK. You've got solicitor fees, which are around about £1,500. You've got the survey, which is usually about £500. And then you've got mortgage broker fees, which is another £500 or so. So buying a £100,000 property, you'll probably need closer to around about 30k all in and not 10k. Now let's talk about interest only versus repayment. It's another common misunderstanding because most people with a residential mortgage are on a repayment mortgage. You pay back the loan and the interest each month. But with buy-to-let, most investors use interest-only mortgages, and that means lower monthly payments and more cash flow left in your pocket. Now, at the end of the mortgage term, you still owe the full loan amount, and you might wonder, why would anyone do that? After all, most of us grow up being told to avoid debt and pay off your mortgage as soon as possible. Well, here's the beauty of UK property, because over time, property prices go up, but your mortgage stays the same. And thanks to inflation, that original loan becomes less of a burden over time. That's the difference between good debt and bad debt, which we'll cover more in a future video. Plus, interest-only mortgages help with lending. But why? Because the lender wants to see that the rent easily covers the mortgage. If you have a repayment mortgage on your home, you're the one paying it from your income. But with a buy-to-let, it's the tenant covering that cost, which makes lenders more comfortable. And in the early years, we want to focus on building income. And then later on, you can choose to reduce the debt if that fits your strategy. So that brings me on to, should you buy in your own name or through a limited company? Now, always speak to a tax advisor. But if you're planning to build a portfolio, it is usually more tax efficient to buy through a limited company. Buying personally used to be common, but after the tax changes, like Section 24, it's a lot less efficient, especially for higher rate taxpayers. And that's because you now pay tax on the full rental income and not just the profit. And in a limited company, you can offset mortgage interest and claim more expenses, which often results in a much lower tax bill. That said, I'm not an accountant, so always speak to a qualified property tax advisor before deciding. So now we need to choose an area for you to invest in. Buy-to-let is a great starting point. It's low risk and easier to finance. And once you've chosen your area, you need to decide on your budget. Do you need a lower entry market maybe? You need to ask yourself how much time you have. Can you travel for viewings, or can you manage the property in that area? And you need to have a think about the local fundamentals, such as the rental demand, the local economy, schools, transport links, etc., etc. Now, once you've chosen your area, you need to know how to analyze a deal, and you need to make sure the numbers stack before you buy. Here's what we always look at: capital required, how much of your own money is going into it. Then the monthly cash flow, which is rent minus mortgage and expenses, and then your ROI, which is your return on investment, your annual profit divided by money in. Forget about the yield for now because it doesn't show the full picture. So I would focus on cash flow and ROI. Also have a think about cash flow versus capital growth. Should you chase cash flow or capital appreciation? And in our view, you should start with cash flow. It keeps your business alive and pays the bills. But if you're already earning a strong income from your job, you might want to go for capital growth areas from day one. Long-term wealth comes from capital growth, which means basically the property rising in value over time. But the best properties, they do both. They cash flow well and they grow in value. So after going through this, it's basically a quick crash course on buy-to-let. And I wanted to keep the video short, but give you enough information to help you make better decisions based on where you're starting from. I know there's a lot more to cover, but if you've got any questions, please drop them in the comments. And if you're looking for help finding your next investment, check out what we do at Wholesale Property, where we source hands-off investments for busy investors. We've also got a WhatsApp community where you can stay updated and get access to our exclusive deals. And I'll leave a link for that in the comments. So thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.